Hi. The focus of these videos is digital storytelling. The references I'm going to use include Lukarevsky, published in 2016, which is a literature review on the role of storytelling on language learning. So it doesn't specifically focus on the digital aspect of storytelling, but it's a very interesting overview. The Jagger and colleagues, published in 2017, is another paper that I'm using. It reviews digital storytelling in research in a systematic fashion. And finally, Rob in 2008, which is also a review of the advantages of storytelling in the 21st century classrooms. I should also say that I'm not recording this presentation in a studio, so please expect some background noise, mostly coming from the birds which are chirping in my neighborhood. Right, so let's get started with an overview of the content. And I should add that the content will not follow exactly the same order, but I will try to cover and discuss these concepts. First, I'm going to discuss the history of story and storytelling, and also discuss what is digital storytelling and what we mean by that, and provide some definitions for that. Then I will talk about the aspects and uses of digital storytelling. I also cover findings from the thematic reviews that I mentioned before, with focus on the implications for teaching and language learning classes. So the history of storytelling is interesting. There is no evidence for us to clearly show when storytelling started, but we do have compelling evidence that we have loved storytelling throughout our history, and by we I mean humans. We can look at two sections of our history. One is the pre-civilization or pre-settlement history, during which time humans were more foragers and they had a nomadic sort of lifestyle. And the second half, or the second section of our history, is viewed to be when the civilization started to emerge. In the first half of our history, we can find a lot of, cave paintings which were created by cave dwellers who used pigments like ochre, which is like this material, to paint on walls, through which they created their myths and stories. One of the earliest cave paintings which we have discovered was in Spain, which was created has been dated back to 64,000 years ago. This one here. There is some argument as to whether it was created by Homo sapiens or Homo neanderthals. I think the most recent evidence shows that it was created most likely by humans rather than Neanderthals. The second piece of evidence that I would like to share here is another cave painting which was discovered in a cave in Indonesia and which has been dated back to 40,000 to 54,000 years ago. And this one is the shape of a cattle. It has been argued that the presence of these, as well as this one and a lot of other cave paintings, indicate that humans were interested in creating symbolic arts, and this symbolic behavior is taken as a proxy for language, and for sure as a proxy for storytelling as well, especially this one, which very obviously includes different elements of stories. For example, characters. This was, if I'm not mistaken, this was discovered in a cave in Libya in Africa, which obviously includes characters which are humans and some animals. It has a setting in which humans are probably hunting some animals. If you think a bit, inferentially, you can probably find a plot and even a point of view. A point of view refers to use of first person or third person or second person in recounting the stories. Of course, we cannot immediately find that point of view here, but the point is quite a few elements of stories can be found in this cave painting. Which brings me to the point that if some species, like humans, were able to create a piece of art which symbolically represents the world around them, they were also probably able to create stories, because stories are also symbolic representations of aspects of the world around us. If it's not compelling enough to believe that these Homo sapiens were able to tell and generate stories, I think there is a lot more compelling evidence when it comes to ancient civilizations. For example, the ancient Sumerian creation myth, which has been recorded on some clay tablets, or is actually a very strong evidence for our ancestors' love for storytelling and creating or writing stories. The important point is that in all of these ancient civilizations, they not only told stories, but they recorded it. It seems that we have loved recording our stories throughout our history, especially after the invention of the writing systems. Then the story of the flood or the myth, which is a Sumerian myth, which inspired the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a Babylonian story, which also inspired the myth of Noah's flood in the Bible. All of these are stories that have been handed down to us, and of course these are just 2 or 3 examples among the many stories that have been created by different civilizations around the world. For example, the ancient Greek stories, ancient Persian stories, ancient Chinese, Malay, and all other civilizations which I haven't listed here, and I think I will need a very long list to talk about those civilizations and their arts. All of them indicate that we loved storytelling at some point, and we continue to love storytelling. So the conclusion that I want to draw here is that storytelling is probably as old as our history. And in addition to that, we liked to record our stories in different formats using the different technologies that have been available to us throughout the ages. Now, if you recall, and if you have watched my previous videos, I discussed and reviewed several types of storytelling or spoken genre storytelling genres, including narratives, anecdotes, exemplum and recounts, observations and counts, opinions and gossips. Now, I'm not going to go through these again because I have discussed them extensively in another video, so I suggest that you watch the video. I'll provide the link in the comment section for you so it will be easier. So it would be interesting to find out how these different types of genres with different infrastructures or macrostructures can be recreated using digital technologies. That's something that I will try to cover in addition to other points that I have discussed earlier. So let's just call this the end of the first installment. Let's call it an introduction to storytelling, and I will continue by talking about other aspects and dimensions of storytelling and digital storytelling in the next installment. Thank you very much for your attention.